So, welcome everyone to another Living Life Naturally podcast where you're going to find different things relating to you ladies in menopause, perimenopause, midlife, because we want to bring you an experience that's the healthiest possible for you to live during this phase of life. And you'll find everything that we're going to chat about in the show notes today, so that if you want the free resources available, they'll be right there in the show notes for you. So today I have Lynn Weimer with me. Where are you joining us from, Lynn?
I am in a little town north of Boise, Idaho, and so I'm in Cascade, Idaho.
Ah,
Population about 1,000, so tiny
yes,
little town.
wonderful. So Lynn has a passion and mission to transform the lives of women beyond 50, especially those who struggle with emotional eating, food addictions, and obesity. Having struggled with similar issues herself, she's combined her previous healing process and mindset work with her experience as an RN and research as an MSN to bring hope and freedom to people of all ages. So, from a place of despair and hopelessness, Lynn has risen to the point where she now competes in Ironman triathlons. She started her own business and she's absolutely in love with life. She's the founder of Be Fit Beyond 50 and she's the author of Be Free Beyond 50. So, very excited to have you on here with us today, Lynn. Welcome to the Living Life Naturally podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
So I know that you have a great passion for guiding women over 50 through overcoming things like emotional eating, food addictions, obesity. There are so many transitions and challenges for us in this stage of life. So is that what brought you to doing this? I know from reading what I just did, it sounds like you kind of went through a whole thing yourself, going through this phase of life.
Oh, well, my transition into this phase of life was very abrupt. And
Mm,
I ended up getting divorced. Leaving my marriage of almost 30 years
wow.
and having to start a whole new life for myself after having been a homeschooling mom of 6 children up in the mountains. I ended up being a single mom working a low paying job in a little apartment next to the freeway, finishing raising my two youngest teenage sons. And everything suddenly was different just in a heartbeat. And it was a huge transition for me. I found myself not being able to take the time to care for myself as I had
Mm,
earlier. I I was so stressed out. I was so overworked. I just didn't feel like there was time for me at all, and I just put it on the back burner. And meanwhile, the pounds were creeping on, and I didn't know how to get out of it. And right at that very year, just probably a few months after after I left my husband, is when I started going through menopause.
mm, mm,
And just trying to get into nursing school to because I didn't want to raise my boys in poverty. I didn't want to stay in poverty. So all these things together, my own health and mental wellness were way on the back burner of everything else. And that was a huge uh, just time for me of I wasn't thinking of anybody else at that time, but just looking back on it, thinking, what were my struggles? What was I going through? And how did I get out of that? How did I get to this place that I'm in now? And what can I offer
mm,
to women who are going through uh, similar or even different. It doesn't matter. But what can I do to help make it easier for them than it was for me?
Yeah, I think so many of us get into coaching of any kind, really, because of what we've been through and the wisdom that we've gained through all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that what I want to start with is during this phase of life, emotional eating is such a huge part of it. So why might they find themselves struggling with it more during that midlife transition?
One thing that I realized as I was going through that transition was how relegated off to the side of society women over 50 are. I felt so cast aside and worthless, irrelevant. I felt so irrelevant. Like I didn't have my youth anymore. I didn't have the things that I felt had made my identity in my younger years. And I thought, do I even matter anymore?
Mm,
I've spent my entire life, entire adult life, raising my 6 children, homeschooling them, giving them an education. And now I'm in a different phase. And what is there even for me? And it's really easy to just try to drown out the heaviness that we can feel at this time with food and comfort ourselves with food. And a lot of us have done that our whole lives. And so, it just can get worse at this time.
yes, for
Um,
sure. So I know that one of the big things with emotional eating, been there, done that, so to speak, and it really affects our energy levels as well as our overall vitality. And yet that energy and that vitality is something that we really need even more. As you say, you get into the over 50s and you're already going through this whole mindset thing and then when we start having low energy, low vitality, it really puts another bump in the road for us. So, what are some of the
mhm.
strategies that we can use so that we can get past that and get our energy and vitality back?
One of the biggest things for me was cutting the sugar
Mm,
out of my diet. And when we emotionally eat, some of us go toward the salty, crunchy,
mhm,
those sorts of things, but a lot of us go toward the sweet. Either way is probably the high carb. Those are the kinds of things that we think of as the comfort foods, is the high carb things. And that's all sugar in our bodies, right? And we think of something sweet and it's going to give us a little boost, energize us, and it's actually the opposite.
mhm.
It actually brings us down. We get a crash from that. And a lot of us, if we're addicted to sugar and those sugary kinds of foods, we aren't we don't know life without that. Our the our blood glucose levels are higher and then they can drop too, but we don't know the feeling of having that cleared out of our system. And just the biggest thing for me in my transformation was whole natural foods, plant based, um, And it could be fruit too. It doesn't have to just be the non-starchy vegetables. It can be the starchier vegetables. But if it's the whole food, if it's the real food, as close as it grows out of the ground as you can get it, then it it hits your body a whole different way. You get all the nutrients, all the fiber, all the everything that you need, and you don't you no longer have the cravings, you no longer have the crashes, you no longer have the energy drops. You're much more on an even keel, and the microbiome in your gut actually changes to where you're enjoying those foods. And
Yes.
it stops being about exerting a whole bunch of willpower and depriving yourself and going on this diet that you're eventually going to go off of. No, it's a whole lifestyle change, which starts, for me anyway, and what I teach, it starts with a change of identity. And it starts with a change of I of valuing myself, of I want to put the most nurturing, nourishing things into my body and treat myself in the most nurturing way that I can, because I'm now valuing myself instead of feeling like a failure and beating myself up all the
Mm.
time. So all of those things combined, what I just said, it can transform your energy level, just
Right.
give you a new enjoyment of every aspect of your life.
Yeah, I know I found that in my life. My transition was very quick because I was dealing with daily migraines. And so I had
Mm,
to kind of quickly get off the sugar, get off the processed foods. I was a person who fell asleep at my desk at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
uh-huh.
And as you say, when you're eating that good, nutritious, fiber-filled foods, very often protein rich, natural foods, it
Mm-hmm.
just gives you back your energy. When I started doing it, I no longer fell asleep at my desk. I could get up in the morning and have my energy. And I think it really
Yes.
helps also with our vitality and the way that we look, because beauty, of course, is from the inside out.
Yeah.
So, one thing I want to ask you about is when we think about making a transition, it's so hard for some people to do because that sugar craving really has had an effect in our brain chemicals, and so we're actually addicted to it. So, how do you help people begin to change that whole mindset that they have because they feel like well, they may not really know they're addicted to it, but they are addicted to it. And how do you help them or teach them to get off that hamster wheel?
Yeah, I go at it kind of in the same way that I went at it myself at first. Was I always, you know, we think that our tiny little choices don't really matter in the moment. And we're going for what tastes good in the moment. And I just realized one day this strawberry is as good as any dessert. And I was just eating this strawberry and thinking, why do I feel such a strong pull toward the brownie? you know? And if I if I cultivate this mindset of the strawberry is every bit as good. There's nothing better than this because this is so amazing. And at the same time, I'm nurturing my body. I'm caring for myself. I'm loving myself just by eating this strawberry, just by making this one tiny little choice in this moment. I am taking a step toward the life that I want for myself instead of away from it. And I think we have a tendency to fool ourselves into thinking that those tiny little choices in the moment don't matter.
Mm.
But we're just realizing that they have monumental results. And so the thing that I tell women the most is paint a clear picture in your mind of what you want your future to be. And then take those tiny steps toward that future. But make it something that, we talk about visualizing or having a vision board or things like that, but it needs to be visceral. It needs to be something that we really feel in a positive way. And for me, it's crossing the finish line of an Ironman, is this brownie going to get me there? No, it's not. And when that vision is so powerful in my life, the choices become much easier because I'm working towards something that's bigger than this little thing in front of me right here, right now, that tastes good. But then you find as you go along, as you make those tiny little choices in the moment, then you are reprogramming your brain, and those choices taking you off this way are not as appealing anymore.
Right.
The more you make the good choices, the more appealing those are. And then the less appealing the other stuff is, because you start feeling better and looking better. I'm no beauty queen, but I look way better than I did in my 50s. I'm in my mid 60s now. And I feel better. I look better. I'm stronger. I'm fitter, everything. And the most important is the joy, that internal satisfaction that I have now that I didn't have before, and the confidence in my own skin.
Yeah, I so get that. I've been on a very similar journey, so not the Ironman journey, but definitely the holistic part of it. And I think, it's not just about what we eat, but there are other holistic health practices that are complementary to that journey of overcoming emotional eating and even achieving weight balance. So what specific practices do you recommend?
As far as the physical side, I just say move your body in a way that brings you joy, because I don't necessarily, I don't push people toward Ironman. Like, you need to, if you really want to be fit, you need to, no, I don't think that. I don't believe that. That's me. That's my thing that's congruent with me. But it could be yoga. It could be going for a walk. I highly recommend everybody spends time walking, because it gets your heart pumping and your blood flowing, and taking deep breaths and being outside, and it clears your mind and lifts your spirits. So many benefits just from walking. But making that part of your day, for sure. And then it could be anything that it could be riding a bike, it could be swimming, or it could be working in your garden, making this beautiful garden. And that can be so therapeutic, but it's so individual to each person, what it is. And it could be being able to get up off the floor, playing with your grandkids, being able to get down on the floor with them, knowing you're going to be able to get right back up again.
Absolutely,
That's
yes.
huge for a lot of women that I
Yeah,
talk to,
yeah.
that they can chase after the grandkids, that they'll be there when their grandkids graduate from high school or college, or be there in the front row for them getting married, or things like that. A lot of women have lost so much hope that they don't even know if they're going to be around. And on the path that they're on right now, they're not going to be around for those big milestones. And so, even just that can be a huge incentive to really want to turn this around and make those tiny choices that are going to get you moving in the right direction.
Mhm. I like how you say tiny choices because that's kind of how I run my health coaching practice, is doing it a step at a time. And
Mm-hmm.
that way you can build habit upon habit, and then it just becomes a way of life. And then, as you say, you look back and you can hardly believe that you used
Yeah,
to do some of the things that you did.
right. Yeah, my life is so different now. And just to put it in perspective, too, before I left my marriage, which I'm not here to advocate one way or another with that, that was what I needed to do for my own health and well being. But prior to that, I was in such a state of hopelessness that I was hoping that something would take me out.
Mhm.
I could not, I thought my life was over and that all there was left to do was just hang on and survive till the end. And I wanted that end to come sooner rather than later. I could not fathom 20, 30, 40 more years of living that way. And I thought that was my only option. And so for me to look back on those very dark days in my mental space and to look at the beautiful life that I have now, and the health and the fitness that I enjoy, and that I can set goals and I can work toward those goals. And it doesn't matter if I achieve the goals or not, it's the working toward them. But it's just such a contrast to where I was. I can hardly wrap my mind around it even now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I want to help women have that same kind of hope and that same kind of transformation that I had.
I appreciate that because I think that as women, when we get into our midlife phase, 50s, 60s, whatever, we really should look at it expectantly to think that we can live a longer life and be fitter and healthier than we were. And I
Yes,
think it's simple step by step pieces that people can take in the right direction. Maybe they don't want to handle a whole big diet change right now. Not, I don't, when I say diet, I mean the way that we eat, but they can do
absolutely.
it a step at a time. And
Yes.
then you look back and the transformation can be really magnificent, something that we really hadn't expected.
Hmm. Yeah, I love how you qualified that word diet because I have that same thing. My diet is what I eat. It's not something I go on with the plan
Right.
that eventually I'm going to go off it. I'm never going
Yes.
to go off this way of eating. This is who I am now.
Right. Yeah, I so
Yeah.
get that. So if you had one tip that you would want to leave our listeners with, what would that be?
It's envision the life that you want for yourself and then start making those tiny choices in that direction. And my one hope is that you will be able to experience, it's not going to look the same as mine, but every bit as much of the joy and energy and vitality that I'm experiencing now,
Mhm.
that you would experience that also, and really live your life and know that it's not over. It's not too late.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I believe you have a resource for our listeners today.
I do. I have a little guide of 3 secrets to being fit beyond 50. And it's things that I've talked about today. And it just kind of encapsulates it and tells a little bit about my story. And I'd love for you to enjoy that.
Yeah, that you'll find that in the show notes below. And how is the best way for people to connect with you?
I think the best way is just send me an email, Lynn, same as Lynn, except without the E on the end, um, at befitbeyond50.com. And 50 is spelled out. It's not just the number 50. It's FIFTY. But you will, if you go to befitbeyond50.com, you'll find my my website and email
Awesome.
me.
Yes,
Yes.
that will all be in the show notes. So, Lynn, I really
Yes.
appreciate you coming onto my podcast today and sharing your journey. And it's just so inspiring where you've come from and where you are now. That's really exciting.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Thanks. You have been listening to the Living Life Naturally podcast, where we're on a mission to inform, inspire, and encourage women to live their best life confidently, joyfully, and freely from what's been holding them back. For show notes and free resources, visit holistic-healthandwellness.com. And I'd be delighted if you'd follow us on socials to connect further. If you enjoyed this show, why not share it with your friends? If you found good value, chances are they will too. And of course, a 5-star review on iTunes is always greatly appreciated, as much as I appreciate you listening. So until next time, live life naturally and joyfully.